conventional warfare. Conventional warfare is like a chess game played on a massive scale, where two or more nations face each other with traditional military forces. Think of armies meeting on battlefields, tanks rolling across plains, and aircraft dominating the skies, all following established rules of engagement and international laws of war. What makes conventional warfare unique is its structured nature. Like a deadly dance, both sides typically wear uniforms, carry standard military weapons, and target each other's military forces rather than civilians. This type of warfare has shaped our world through conflicts like World War I and II, where nations pitted their industrial and military might against each other. The strategy revolves around controlling territory, destroying the enemy's military capabilities, and achieving clear political objectives. It's about overwhelming force meeting overwhelming force, where victory often goes to the side with superior technology, numbers, or tactical skill. Think of D-Day, where Allied forces launched a massive coordinated assault against Nazi defenses. However, conventional warfare has evolved dramatically with technology. What started with soldiers marching in formation with muskets has transformed into combined arms operations involving precision-guided missiles and sophisticated electronic warfare. Modern conventional warfare is like a high-stakes game where every move is amplified by technology. But despite its evolution, the basic principles remain: destroy the enemy's ability, control strategic territory, and force the opposition to submit to your political will. It's the most straightforward form of warfare, yet its impact on human history has been profound and far-reaching. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is the David versus Goliath of military strategy, where smaller, weaker forces take on powerful opponents through surprise, mobility, and clever tactics. It's like a lion being harassed by a pack of swift and elusive hyenas, wearing it down through countless small attacks. The essence of guerrilla warfare lies in its unpredictability. Guerrilla fighters blend into civilian populations and strike unexpectedly. They might attack supply lines one day, communications the next, and key installations after that, creating a constant state of uncertainty and fear. This type of warfare turns conventional military advantages into disadvantages. Large armies become clumsy and ineffective against an enemy they can't see or predict. Expensive military equipment becomes vulnerable to simple, improvised weapons. The Vietnam War perfectly illustrates this, where a superpower's advanced military struggled against determined guerrilla fighters. The psychological aspect is crucial in guerrilla warfare. Each successful attack, however small, boosts the guerrilla's morale while demoralizing their stronger opponent. It's a strategy of patience and persistence, where victory comes not from winning big battles but from making the enemy's occupation too costly to maintain. History has shown that guerrilla warfare can be remarkably effective. From the American Revolution to modern insurgencies, it has helped weaker forces resist, and sometimes defeat much stronger opponents. It's a reminder that in warfare, size and power aren't everything. Strategy and determination often matter more.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Civil war. Civil war is perhaps the most tragic form of warfare. Imagine a family turning against itself, brother fighting brother, neighbor against neighbor. It's when a nation tears itself apart from within, with different factions fighting for control of the country or for the right to break away. What makes civil wars particularly devastating is their intimate nature. Unlike wars between nations, civil wars divide communities and families. The enemy isn't some foreign force, it's people you once called friends and neighbors. The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, perfectly illustrates this, where Americans fought Americans over fundamental differences in values and vision for the nation. The impact of civil wars goes beyond battlefield casualties. They destroy the social fabric of nations, leaving deep scars that can take generations to heal. Infrastructure is demolished, economies collapse, and the psychological trauma affects entire populations. Looking at modern examples like Syria or Yemen shows how civil wars can reduce thriving nations to rubble. Civil wars often start from political, ethnic, or religious differences that escalate into armed conflict. Like a pressure cooker without a release valve, tensions build until they explode into violence. What begins as peaceful protests or political disagreements can spiral into full-scale warfare when compromise seems impossible. The aftermath of civil wars is equally challenging. Reconciliation between former enemies, rebuilding destroyed infrastructure, and healing societal wounds require tremendous effort and time. Some nations never fully recover from their civil wars, carrying the scars for generations. Cold War. The Cold War represents warfare's evolution into something more subtle, but equally dangerous, a conflict fought not with bullets and bombs, but with threats, propaganda, and proxy battles. Imagine two powerful boxers, both afraid to throw the first punch because it might lead to mutual destruction. What made the Cold War unique was its global scale, the threat of nuclear annihilation, and the United States and Soviet Union competing. Like two massive chess players, moved pieces around the global board, each trying to outmaneuver the other without triggering a catastrophic direct conflict. This led to a constant state of tension and fear that lasted for decades. The battlegrounds were everywhere: space race, arms race, economic competition, and ideological warfare. Each side tried to prove its system, capitalism or communism, was superior. They competed in everything from Olympic medals to moon landings, turning every achievement into a propaganda victory. Countries were forced to choose sides, creating a bipolar world divided into Western and Eastern blocs. This division influenced everything from international trade to cultural exchange. The Berlin Wall became the perfect symbol of this divided world. Perhaps most significantly, the Cold War showed how warfare could evolve beyond traditional combat. It demonstrated that psychological pressure, economic power, and technological superiority could be just as effective as military might in achieving global dominance. Nuclear warfare. Nuclear warfare represents humanity's most terrifying military capability, the power to destroy civilization itself. Unlike any previous form of warfare, nuclear conflict threatens not just armies or nations, but the very survival of our species. The development of nuclear weapons fundamentally changed military strategy. When both sides possess these weapons, traditional concepts of victory become meaningless. It's like two people holding grenades. Pulling the pin ensures mutual destruction. This reality led to the doctrine of mutually assured destruction and the fear of total annihilation. The psychological impact of nuclear weapons extends far beyond their physical destructive power. The images of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, devastating potential, and existential anxiety have created a unique kind of fear in modern society. What makes nuclear warfare particularly insidious is its long-lasting effects, radioactive fallout, and nuclear winter. Beyond the immediate destruction, nuclear weapons can poison environments for generations, potentially threatening all life on Earth. Despite international efforts to prevent nuclear proliferation, the threat remains. As more nations gain nuclear capabilities, the risk of these weapons being used continues to be one of humanity's greatest challenges. Biological warfare. Biological warfare represents one of the most insidious forms of conflict, using disease as a weapon. It's like unleashing a genie that, once released, cannot be controlled and might turn against its own master. Throughout history, diseases have often been more deadly than weapons in warfare. But biological warfare takes this natural threat and weaponizes it deliberately. From ancient times, when armies poisoned wells with dead animals, to modern threats of engineered pathogens, biological weapons have evolved to become increasingly sophisticated and dangerous. What makes biological warfare particularly frightening is its potential for uncontrollable spread. Unlike conventional weapons, biological agents can replicate themselves and spread globally. They don't respect borders or distinguish between combatants and civilians. A single release could potentially trigger a global pandemic. Modern biotechnology has both increased the threat and provided better defenses. While we can now detect and combat biological agents more effectively, the same technology could potentially be used to create more dangerous pathogens. International laws ban biological weapons, reflecting humanity's collective recognition of their horrific nature. Yet the threat remains, particularly from terrorist groups or rogue states who might see these weapons as a way to achieve maximum impact with minimal resources. Chemical warfare. Chemical warfare represents humanity's dark mastery of chemistry turned into a weapon of mass suffering. Unlike bullets or bombs that kill quickly, chemical weapons are designed to inflict agonizing pain and prolonged suffering through the manipulation of lethal substances. The horror of chemical warfare first shocked the world during World War I, when chlorine gas clouds rolled across battlefields, causing soldiers to suffocate in their trenches. This marked a turning point where science and industry were deliberately employed to create weapons that attacked the human body at its most basic biological level. What makes chemical weapons particularly horrific is their indiscriminate nature. Like a toxic cloud that follows the wind, these weapons can't distinguish between soldiers and civilians, adults and children. They can contaminate areas for long periods, making regions uninhabitable and leaving a legacy of birth defects and chronic illnesses. Despite international bans and widespread revulsion, chemical weapons continue to appear in modern conflicts. The use of sarin gas in Syria and nerve agents in assassination attempts shows that this threat hasn't disappeared. It's a reminder that when science is perverted for warfare, the results can be catastrophically inhumane. Modern chemical warfare has evolved to include incapacitating agents, riot control substances, and complex ethical challenges in an era where internal security and international conflict often overlap. Psychological warfare. Psychological warfare is like fighting a battle for the mind rather than territory. It's the art of breaking an enemy's will to fight without firing a shot, using fear and demoralization as weapons more powerful than any bomb. This type of warfare operates on multiple levels, from large-scale propaganda campaigns to targeted manipulation of enemy leaders. It's about creating narratives that weaken enemy resolve. Think of Tokyo Rose broadcasting to American troops in World War II, or modern social media campaigns designed to influence elections. The power of psychological warfare lies in its ability to multiply force. A small action, properly amplified through psychological operations, can have massive strategic effects. The dropping of atomic bombs on Japan, beyond their physical destruction, created a psychological impact that resonates even today. Modern psychological warfare has evolved with technology. Social media, deep fakes, and targeted disinformation campaigns can now reach millions instantly, creating confusion and chaos on an unprecedented scale. The defense against psychological warfare requires mental resilience and critical thinking. In an age of information warfare, the ability to recognize manipulation has become as important as traditional military skills. Economic warfare. Economic warfare is like a siege of the modern age, where instead of cutting off food and supplies to a castle, nations use financial weapons to strangle their opponents' economies. It's warfare conducted through banks and markets rather than battlefields. This form of conflict uses tools like sanctions, trade embargoes, and asset freezes to weaken adversaries. The strategy is to make the economic cost of an enemy's actions so high that they're forced to change their behavior. The international sanctions against Russia following its invasion of Ukraine demonstrate how economic warfare can be as powerful as military action. What makes economic warfare particularly effective in our interconnected world is its ripple effects. When major economies clash, the impact spreads globally through supply chains and financial markets. It's like dropping a stone in a pond. The waves affect even distant shores. Modern economic warfare has become increasingly sophisticated, involving cyber attacks, market manipulation, and payment systems. Countries can be cut off from global financial networks with the push of a button, effectively isolating them from the modern economy. However, economic warfare often brings unintended consequences. Sanctions can strengthen authoritarian regimes, create black markets, and harm innocent civilians more than their leaders. It's a reminder that even non-violent warfare can have devastating humanitarian impacts. Cyber warfare. Cyber warfare represents warfare's evolution into the digital realm, where battles are fought with code instead of bullets. It's like having the power to reach through computer screens and disrupt everything from power grids to nuclear centrifuges. What makes cyber warfare unique is its ability to cause massive damage without physical presence. A single hacker with a laptop can potentially do more damage than a traditional military unit. The Stuxnet virus that damaged Iran's nuclear program showed how digital weapons can affect the physical world in dramatic ways. The battle space in cyber warfare is everywhere from military networks to civilian infrastructure, from smartphones to satellites. Every connected device is potentially both a target and a weapon. This creates a new kind of vulnerability where everyday technology can be turned against its users. Modern society's dependence on digital systems makes cyber warfare particularly dangerous. Attacks can disable power grids, financial systems, or military communications. It's like having the ability to turn off the nervous system of modern civilization. The rules of engagement in cyber warfare are still evolving. Questions about what constitutes an act of war in cyberspace, how to attribute attacks, and what responses are appropriate remain challenging issues in international law and military strategy. Proxy war. Proxy wars are like chess games where major powers move other nations and groups as pieces, avoiding direct confrontation while still pursuing their strategic objectives. It's warfare by substitution, where supporting actors fight on behalf of major powers. This type of warfare became particularly prominent during the Cold War, when the US and Soviet Union backed opposing sides in conflicts worldwide to avoid direct nuclear confrontation. From Vietnam to Afghanistan, these proxy battles shaped global politics, while allowing superpower rivalry to play out at a safer distance. What makes proxy wars particularly complex is their layered nature. Local conflicts become intertwined with international power politics, creating situations where the actual combatants might have very different goals from their powerful sponsors. This can make resolution particularly challenging. Modern proxy wars have evolved with technology and globalization. Support now includes weapons and training, but also media coverage, diplomatic backing, and economic assistance. The conflicts in Syria and Yemen demonstrate how proxy wars have become more sophisticated and multi-layered. The human cost of proxy wars often falls heaviest on civilian populations caught between competing interests. While major powers might see these conflicts as strategic moves, for those on the ground, the suffering is very real and direct.